Okay, so for this video, I've wanted to talk about this subject for a while now, and this is the subject of basically are superpowers real, and also like the connection between like superhero media and the collective unconscious, right? Because you know that like media and video games and movies and TV shows are reflections of the collective unconscious, right? These are reflections of sort of the collective mind of humanity, right? And I feel like that what we're collectively attracted to is a sort of a reflection of it's almost like collective intuition, like what we're collectively attracted to, what we're collectively like repelled by, like clowns, for example. It's like that sounds like a weird example, but clowns are like children are universally scared of clowns, right? And that tells us something about like the origin of clowns, right? Which is that clowns are essentially depictions of Nephilim spirits, right? But that's like a whole other theory, right? Where basically the um like these clown entities are essentially Nephilim, right? Like I mean, it's really like Attack on Titan type of stuff, right? But back on topic, I really wanted to talk about like why is it that human beings are so or people can get so obsessed over like superheroes and stuff like that, like superhuman abilities, right? I mean things that even things like not even just classic like superhero stuff, but even stuff like magic, right? Even stuff like like going to other planets, going to other dimensions. Like we're attracted to the idea that the human being is more capable than is let on, right? I mean, think about like the X-Men, think about the Avengers, think about the Justice League, right? Think about Superman, right? Think about like the Flash, think about Spider-Man, where he gets his powers after a spider bite, or like all of this stuff is I feel like it's almost like it's almost like our minds, our collective mind rather, is it's almost like it's telling us that okay, these abilities are real, and that these I mean, you can look into like the research of like astral projection, of remote viewing, of mind over matter effects, and you can see that these abilities are actually very real, and that these abilities actually have that you can actually learn these abilities, that they have a lot of backing and a lot of research done behind them, right? But the point I wanted to make is it's almost like whenever we see Superman on screen, right? Like whenever we see like Spider-Man or something like that. Anytime, even shit like Batman or Iron Man, like even stuff like that. Like whenever we see that on screen, it sounds crazy, but it's almost like we look at that and it's like we can't help but self-insert and think, what if that was real? We question, like, look, we ask the question, what if that was me? Right, and it's almost like we look at like Superman flying through the fucking sky and having super strength and all this other stuff, and it's almost like the message, right, the download is that that's how it's supposed to be, right? The download is like, I mean, if you look at like something like the Lord of the Rings or something like that, you see like the wizards casting spells and controlling the weather. It's almost like we look at that and it's almost like we can't help but think that, oh, okay, that's the way things should be. That's the real sort of face of man, right? That's the real sort of form of mankind, right? Like without all the genetic alterations, without all the stuff that they're spraying into the sky, without the genetic alteration, the stuff that they're putting in the food and the water, without the without all the manipulation of human perception. It's almost like we're like our collective mind sort of says that's how it's supposed to be, right? The superhuman intellect, right? In some of these films, right? Like we're like it's almost like Sherlock Holmes or something. Like we see that, and it's almost like we intuitively, even though we won't say it out loud, it's almost like we collectively intuitively know that that's the way things are supposed to be. That we are supposed to have all of those sort of abilities, all of those like we're supposed to have more capability and agency beyond what is currently accepted to be like the absolute limit, right? Like, oh, okay, human beings are only capable of this, but we say, but it's almost like our collective unconscious, our spirit, right, our essence, our divine spark. It's almost like it says, oh, it should be up here. It should be way up here, right? And I mean, even if you look at stuff like even like animes and stuff like that. I mean, if you look at like Naruto or something like that, like you usually like see them like casting jutsus and stuff like that, right? It's like I feel like there are certain people are more obsessed with that than others, but I do feel like the obsession with that kind of thing, the collective obsession with that kind of thing, the collective obsession with supernatural power, with the superhuman agency, is almost like it's almost like I do feel like that's a download of that is sort of a message that to sort of search for that power, right? To sort of say that, oh, okay, but this is the way things should be. This is not like you're not supposed to be, like unable to do all these crazy things. Like that's supposed to be the norm, almost as crazy as it sounds, right? As crazy as it sounds, and you can even look at like I have some lucid dream content on my channel where I talk about lucid dreaming, which is basically like being conscious and controlling your dreams, basically. And you can look at stuff like that, and it's like all the stuff that you can do in the dream state. It's almost like okay, like that should be the norm of like being able to use like the human imagination. Which, by the way, that's a word that I want to sort of unpack. Is the human imagination should be able to control our experience. Like how is it that I can conceive of something in here that doesn't exist yet it exists in here, and there's this weird gap in the creative process that quite frankly, like ever since I was like a kid, I felt like wasn't supposed to be there. That gap between conception and perception, that gap between that creative process shouldn't have this massive gap, right? And going back to the word imagination, right? You have imagination, image, magic, right? It's like imagination. It's like magic is in the word, and I sort of feel like that's like, and what this reminds me of is it reminds me of like my early sort of like obsession or with like Green Lantern. Right, so it's like okay, if I could have any power, what would it be? It's like oh, okay, I want to conceive things with my imagination, right? And that's exactly what Green Lantern does. He just like uses willpower, right? And it's interesting that he uses willpower and that like the power is green, which is like the color of the heart center and the chakra system. Right, so and I think that's interesting that he fights against the power of fear, which is like that's sort of an interesting thing, right? But um like at the core, I do believe that like the human imagination is really the key to like act. Like, when I say magic, I don't mean like the lame kind of magic, or like where it's like oh you draw like a fancy like sigil or whatever. Like no, I mean like actual like Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom like level like Dungeons and Dragons magic, right? And so I really really just do think I mean like this is something that I've had like a download on like sort of like an intuitive download on ever since I was little that like the human being should be more capable than is currently accepted. The human being like the norm for the capability of the human being should be way above what is currently accepted. And like every time you see Superman, every time you see Batman, every time you see the Flash, every time you see a wizard, every time you see an alchemist, every time you see anytime you see that kind of thing on the movie screen, right? There is this impulse in the back of everyone's minds that this is the way things should be, that this is the way that this is it's almost like it's reminding us of how things used to be, or it's reminding us it's almost like we're looking into the mirror, right? Because I mean you can't help but self-insert and think okay, what if that was me, right? And that's the proper approach. It's not you're not supposed to look up to like a messiah and think that oh okay they're going to come down and save me. You're supposed to self-insert and ask the question what if it was me, right? And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to sort of like make a video about that because like this is something that I've thought about ever since I was like very little. It's like yeah, is the the power of the human imagination seems to be really important. The yeah, like the attraction to to superhero media also seems to be connected to that, and like the power of the human imagination, and that was something that I got like download like it was like this strong sort of intuitive signal that, like the power of the imagination is like, it's the most important thing. It's the most important thing. This is more important than the rules and regulations of reality. And I feel like that's another thing, is that is one of the biggest deceptions of this matrix, is that this matrix wants to convince you that reality is a set of rules and regulations, right? That, oh, it's about the laws of physics, it's about the laws of science and all this other stuff. That they want to convince you of an objective reality that's unchanged, right? That they want to convince you that the materialist paradigm, right? And I feel like that's like the opposite of what the true prime substance of all reality is, which is, first of all, it's consciousness, right? It's the imagination, right? It's creativity, right? That's the prime substance of all reality. But reality is not a set of rules and regulations. It is a blank sheet of paper onto which anything can be created, and that's, I feel like that's something that is like the core message, or like the core sort of impulse that I think people get whenever they look at like superhero films. Like they look at that, and it's almost like the collective unconscious is like, oh, that's us, right? It's like, oh, that's us. We're looking into the mirror. We self-insert like that. That's us. That should be us, right? And another thing that's interesting too is that in a lot of these, iterations, like specifically like the Avengers and like the Justice League, right? Like you see like the general plot is also, I feel like it's also a reflection of reality, right? Which is that basically you have human beings coming together to work as a team to fend off typically an interdimensional alien invasion, right? I mean, like those are the moving parts, right? You have human beings gaining powers, fighting off an interdimensional alien invasion, right? Like basically extraterrestrial interdimensional entities coming from another reality, right? And this is exactly what we're facing now. If you read like stuff like the Bible, if you read the Quran, if you look at all that stuff, it's basically anti-human, non-human entities in the unseen, right? If you replace, like parademons in like in DC, if you replace, if you replace, alien grays or whatever, if you replace that with demonic entities, that there you go. That's exactly what's happening. It's literal, beings from another dimension trying to invade this realm, right? Beings from another dimension that want, yet again, from another dimension, and non-human and anti-human, right? That's the bottom line. The anti-human, non-human, interdimensional, non-physical, in the unseen aspect, right? And that's exactly what's happening. So I feel like even more, whenever you see, like those superhero films where it's like people come together, like those superpowered people, they team up and they fight off this alien invasion. It's almost like we like that even more, because that's a reflection of our current predicament in this sort of, like soul, this sort of reincarnation trap, this soul trap, right? And so I definitely feel like the superhero media and, the collective unconscious, I feel like that those sort of go together, right? And I do feel like that those things are definitely a reflection of a real thing. Like, yet like the interdimensional extraterrestrial invasion of this planet, that's a real thing, right? Superhuman, supernatural capabilities, that's a real thing. Our power in numbers, that's something that's hit upon in like all these movies too. It's like, oh, we have to work as a team, right? We have to come together to fight this bigger threat, and like that. And even in like I remember like watching like the Snyder cut, right? And I remember like the way like Wonder Woman like talks about she says like the defenders of Earth, right? And like that just really like hit a chord in me. I'm like, oh, defenders of Earth, holy shit, right? Like I feel like that's like that should be really, that's really something that I feel like is necessary at this point. Right? I really feel like, as stupid as it sounds, like, oh, okay, that's just a fucking movie. What are you talking about? Like I really feel like whenever like you have that sort of thing sort of talked about, like the defenders of Earth, people teaming up to defend this planet, to defend our people against this interdimensional threat, right? Like I feel like that's something that like it really strikes a chord, and it's like, ooh, okay, that's a real thing. That's something that we need to pay attention to. And I really think that is like, and just this video in general, I feel like that's the general message that I wanted to get across is like the connection between, like why is it that the collective unconscious and the collective mind is so attracted to superhero media? Or like why is it obsessed with this idea that that human beings are more capable than we're led to believe, that like human beings are more um that we're more than meets the eye, that we're more than we think we are, and that once we acquire this power, right? It's not once we realize what they are, because once we sort of identify these entities, what like whether they're like like reptilian or greys or demonic entities, doesn't matter. It's like, okay, once they're exposed, okay, they're scared, but once we realize who we are, then the jig's up, right? Like once we realize who we really are, like once we realize our potential as a human race, I mean, like that's going to take it to a whole nother level. Like that's when the game's over, is when we remember who we fully are, and our power, right? So yeah, I mean, yeah, I just I just really wanted to sort of vent about that, rant about that. I think it's an important subject. As silly as it sounds, like, oh, okay, it's just a superhero movie. What are you talking about? But yeah, I just really wanted to talk about that. I really really think that there is a connection between why the human mind is obsessed with that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's the video.